and welcome to Note Doctors. My name is Paul.
My name is Jen.
My name is Ben.
And we are your hosts. We are all university music theory instructors who are passionate about music theory and music theory instruction. In this podcast, we will be talking about all things theory with some of the best music theory teachers in the country. If you want to know more about music theory and the most effective and innovative ways to teach it, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome back to Note Doctors, the music theory and pedagogy podcast. Well, we have made it to 50 episodes. I cannot believe it. Unbelievable. I didn't think we'd make it to 10, quite frankly.
Right.
But we made it to 50. We started this podcast the fall of 2020. Mm-hmm. So over 2 years ago. And since that time, we've had 50 episodes. We've had numerous guests from all over the country and Canada. We've had two guests who teach in Canada, so we've had listeners from all over the country. So thank you so much for listening, for writing messages to us on Facebook or through our email, which is notedoctorspodcast@gmail.com. But it's been a great ride. We have learned so much.
Oh my gosh,
honestly, like this is why we do it, so that we can learn and get better.
Yes.
Totally. But so we thought for our 50th episode to bring back our very first guest, who was none other than the Dr. Jennifer Snodgrass, who is an incredible music theorist, incredible pedagogue, and she was our first guest, and where she talked about her book on teaching music theory, where she went around the country and interviewed and observed all sorts of folks, including our own Jenn Weaver in the classroom. And we thought that we would have her back on to talk about what's going on in her life, her changes, and also just the wisdom and passion that she has for music theory and just for teaching and mentoring students is such an inspiration, I think. And so we just loved getting back to talk with her, and it was great. It was a great conversation, a great way to spend our 50th episode.
She's the best.
Yeah. And so, let's read a little bit about Jenny.
Will do. Jennifer Snodgrass is the academic director in the School of Music at Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee, where she also teaches music theory and aural skills to undergraduate music majors enrolled in the classical, commercial, and musical theater programs. Snodgrass has received several awards in relation to excellence in undergraduate education, including the UNC Board of Governors Excellence in Teaching Award and the SGA Outstanding Professor Award. She was also named an official quarter finalist for the Grammy Foundation Music Educator Award. Snodgrass has published research in numerous journals and has 3 published textbooks, including Teaching Music Theory, New Voices and Approaches from Oxford in 2020, Contemporary Musicianship from Oxford, 2 editions there, 2016 and 2021, and Fundamentals of Music Theory from Pearson, 2 editions there as well, 2013 and 2019. Snodgrass is the past editor for the Journal of Music Theory Pedagogy and the assistant director of the Gail Boyd de Stwolinski Center for Music Theory Pedagogy.
Yeah, how do you say that last name?
I don't know, but I did my best. And Jenny's just like the best human. Like, oh, she's wonderful. So stick around.
We're here for the students. And every decision that we make has got to go back to that in some way. Is this decision that I'm making about should this event come to campus good for the students? Is me adding another section and having to work with the budget to get that section taught, is that best for the student? Whatever I have to do, that goes back to my mind, that's me. Is it going to help my faculty teach better, do better, learn better? It's going to help my students learn better, play better.
So today our special guest is Jenny Snodgrass. Jenny, we are so pleased to have you back onto the podcast. You were, of course, our first guest back in 2020, and now we are on our 50th episode, so we wanted to bring you back. But things have changed since we last talked to you back in 2020, so maybe you could fill us in and our listeners in on kind of the things that have been going on in your life.
So I am currently the academic director and professor of music theory here at Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. And in that job, a lot of people ask me, what is an academic director? What is that? And it's kind of like a chair plus meets academic dean, that meets everything curriculum and mentorship of faculty, hiring all faculty, all the day-to-day things that have to do with classroom teaching and curriculum, getting the people in place, getting the students in place. All that is part of my job. So that is what I do here, as well as teach 2 theory classes.
Wow. It's a big job.
It's a very big job.
I'm glad you found an hour to talk with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what has the transition been like from where you were at, because you were at a state university?
I was.
And now you're at a private institution. So has there been any kind of surprises in that change?
Yes. So many. I had no intentions, and I say this very publicly. I had no intentions of leaving. There's an article coming out next week. It's coming out in Inside Higher Ed about why this happened, because I had so many people just asking me, and in true research fashion, I'm like, I'm just going to write it. So it got picked up by Inside Higher Ed. It'll be out next week. But I think I had no intentions of going into administration. And so I love teaching. It is who I am, and it continues to be who I am. So when Lipscomb called, at first, I'll be honest, I said no. Why would I do that? I was running a successful grad program. I was happy. I was teaching my classes. I knew exactly what I was doing every single day. But after thinking about it a couple of days, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go check it out. They were looking for someone to be the academic type. So when I got here, what I figured out was, for my interview, was I just love the people and I love this town. Nashville is a place where there's so much music going on, and the School of Music here at Lipscomb is all musicians. So it's both commercial music, classical performance, musical theater, all in together in this large School of Music under the College of Entertainment Arts. So, down the sidewalk from me are 4 Disney animators, and our students work with the scores on the animation. So I've always been very collaborative in nature. So when I came for my interview and saw all that happening, I just got really excited about that potential. And I did a lot of soul searching and actually wrote out my strengths. And teaching's on there, but so is organization and so is leadership. I mean, I've been running the PED conferences, I've run the journal, I've done all that kind of stuff. And I love to make good things great. I know that about myself. So when I saw that, okay, well, maybe this is the next step in my career in a city where I've been doing research in Nashville for almost 10 years now. So I knew the community, I knew the studios. It was just a matter, I just didn't have to drive 7 hours anymore. And I have lunch with these people. And, if I want to go sit in a session to learn about musicianship from a producer side of thing, I just walk down the street or walk across campus, because that's just what happened. So the person that has the office next door to me has 15 Grammy Awards, and so these are the people I work with, these amazing artists in, whether it's in a classical, musical theater, Christian contemporary, gospel, country, all of that. But I'm here to help the academic side and fill out some forms. And I'm being honest to my note doctor friends here. So I'll fill out a form, and just on curriculum, it takes me 5 minutes. And they'll go, Jenny, oh my gosh, you're brilliant. And I'm like, yeah, you have 8 Grammys. That was a curriculum form. But that just makes it really, really fun for me to be in the middle of this environment where all music is championed and all thoughts are championed, and being in a town where I can go see Weird Al and Vince Gill at the Ryman, and the next day go hear an amazing symphonic work. That's something I really wanted in my life. So it's a lot of fun. It's very, very busy. So what's different between a state school and a private school? And one of the things is there's a real sense of a lack of some of the red tape that I was used to in a state school, where I'd had to get 12 signatures. Now I maybe need 3. And the biggest difference is I walk to the administration building to get that signature. Like I literally can walk, the provost knows who I am, and I can just walk and say, I need some guidance on this. It's a small school, about 4,000, with about 170 music majors. And that's one of the things that I have enjoyed. Of course, there's not as much research funding as I'm used to, but I just had a meeting this afternoon with the Center for Teaching and Learning about getting some undergraduate research funding and what that would look like. And so I think a private school also is very, very interdisciplinary, more than I was used to. So the fact that we work with film and animation, and I just had coffee with the college education person talking about some research. I mean, that's something that's a little different because it's easy. At App, I did it. I had all those collaborations going on, but it took a little bit more work. So I missed the funding aspect and maybe some of the resources. But Nashville, if you've ever been here, it is the most social place I've ever been in my life because everything, record deals, I've seen it done. Record deals, management deals, class, figuring out course schedules. It's all done over a cup of coffee and a meal. And a lot is done over barbecue. I mean, a lot. And so I'll sit there, and it's been an adjustment for me because I'm just such a go person. Like they don't take out their phones. They sit there here in Nashville and have a conversation with you, whatever it is, whether it's about academic or whether it's about engineering. They go out for lunch, and it's an hour and 30-minute lunch, and you have their undivided attention. And it's really, and that's the industry side. It's really had an effect on me since I've been here about the importance of relationships and taking the time to really listen instead of making decisions quickly and just, on the fly, like taking the time to listen. The music industry here does an excellent job at that. Excellent. We can learn a lot from it. Yeah,
I love that. And you're right, private school life, like the DBU president sometimes comes to my Christmas concerts at the symphony.
Yeah.
So I know what you're saying, like everybody kind of knows everybody.
Right.
And some things are easier. Like I decided we wanted to overhaul our theory degree. So my colleague and I put our head together. We came up with a proposal, and within like 6 months, it was done. It was through the curriculum committee. It was done. So, yeah.
We teach more, though. I mean, I'm being honest to the listeners.
We do.
Like, we do teach a lot, and even me in my large role here, I still teach 2 classes. I still teach 6 hours a week.
Right.
And theory class today was right in my office because they're setting up technology in our classroom. I'm so excited about that. But new technology, and it's like, all right, well, we'll just be in our classes because my class is small enough. They cap it at like 14. And I love that because I really know my students.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Small classes are great. So a little bit ago, you wrote an article for, I think it was Chronicle, wasn't it?
It was Inside Higher Ed.
Inside Higher Ed.
Oh, that's right. Inside Higher Ed. And it was the 7 hard truths and a few lies about graduate school, right? So could you tell us more about that article? What are those truths?
Well, I'll tell you, when I wrote this, it really was, and I tell this to everybody, it was a love letter to my graduate students. I had no intentions of publishing it. So I was running a graduate program at Appalachian, and I kept in touch with all my graduates for years and years, like most of us do. And so they would send me texts at night and be like, this is happening. I don't know how to handle it. I don't feel comfortable going to talk to my mentor at whatever school they had gone to for their doctoral program. And so I just sat down one day and I just said, you know what? I'm going to tell you some things that people want you to believe and what's true based on my own experience. And I wrote it out, and I was teaching a class, and I handed it out, the preliminary version of this. I handed it out to the students, and I said, I want to talk about this. And just before you go on to graduate degree or before you go get that first job, I want to have an honest conversation. And to be honest, I went back and forth about putting my real name on it. I mean, I write some things under a pseudonym. I mean, some of you know that, but I won't tell you what that is on this podcast, my pseudonym. But I don't know what hit me. COVID changed so much, but for everyone, but part of it, I just wanted my students to have a dose of that it's hard and to watch out for these things. And when I wrote it, I wasn't talking about one thing in particular, like any of my time at any school, but a lot of it's about the stories that I'm hearing from my students going on. So the truths, like for me, that, you know, they're being told they're going to get a job, it's going to be a tenure track, you're going to be in this great town. Well, we know that's not true. I mean, I have a picture of me back behind here of me singing at a bar in Nashville when I was 15. This town's had a hold on me in a very long time. And it took me this long to get here, so to live here. But so some of the truths also, you know, faculty members represent change. So it was a junior faculty member that I had known a long time that, you know, has all these amazing ideas and really amazing. And she was at a university where when she was hired, they were all about it. And she got there and they're like, don't say anything until you get tenure. And so she's like, I don't know if I can stay at this university because of the way that I'm feeling. And I know that she's, you know, contemplating finding something else. And they're going to miss out on a great person with really good ideas. So I've been just looking at some of the truths right now. The imposter syndrome never goes away. I mean, that's been written about, but no matter how successful you are, there still are times that you're like, am I really capable of this? Why did they hire me? Or, you know, how long am I going to have to prove myself? And so I felt like for my students, specifically that one's number 4, that we still feel that way. I was in a writing group a year ago, and we had an honest conversation about how we're still trying to please our dissertation advisors 20 years later. Like, does my dissertation advisor approve of my research? Well, I mean, he does, but like, I don't need to worry about that. So I think that was some of the things, and that's how it came to be. Is I love this part about do not confuse flattery with support, because I think my graduate students and those that have gone to other graduate programs that I mentored would say, you know, they're telling me I'm the best at this, so therefore I'm going to pick up XYZ and do this more, you know? And I'm like, is that setting you up to be successful? Are you going to finish? Are you going to get that article done? So that's where it came from. It was really from my heart. It was for class. And then they got together and said, can you please get this out to other people? So it went viral. It was the #1 article for the year for Inside Higher Ed. And I had 200 emails, over 200 actually, from around the world.
Wow.
Around the world that said, thank you for saying what I couldn't say. And I kept every single one of them and wrote back to every single one. They deserved it. Wow. So it was that was a pivotal moment in my career, that little article that I wrote in like 2 days as a love letter. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that, I mean, even though we're in the humanities, and that can be very different than going to graduate school in other fields, like my fiance is in psychology, and he read the article. I showed it to him, and he was like, all of this is true. You know, and he's not in academia, so he hasn't kind of lived through some of the resenting change and stuff like that, although that's in other areas of research as well. So, yeah, I think it hit the nail right on the head, that article.
Yeah, and it's sad to me, Jenna, it's like, why has it never been written or said before? And I get to the point that, you know, I'm safe, I'm a full professor, and that I'm able to say it. I would really love some of the emails that I had. I need to go back and say, you need to tell your story, because it's really, really powerful that we have to stop this cycle of power, you know, to where students don't feel like they can share that, whether it's in our classroom, whether we're teaching undergrads. And I meant for it to be a positive thing. I know some of it felt a little dark, but at the end, am I glad I became an academic? 1,000%. I love what I do. But I know, and this is what I say, I could have saved years of anxiety, disappointment, self-doubt, and frustration if someone had just told me this may happen. No one prepared me. I was the best scholar, but the day-to-day interactions, not so much. So I hope it made people change. I know pedagogy classes around the country read this article now in their pedagogy class, which is really I don't know. You just see, you don't know the power of what you might write. And it not just in music theory, like you were saying, Jen. Yeah.
Yeah, that power dynamic is something that we don't think about, and it's interesting once you get to a position of like, a professor or something like that, you don't actually realize that you have that power because you kind of still feel like a grad student in some ways. Yeah. But you have that power once you become a teacher of someone else. You have that kind of good or bad potential there in how you kind of wield that control.
Exactly. And when you have that power, I don't know if I said that here in the article, but when you have that power, you have two choices. And I know I'm in administration. This sounds like administrative talk. You can use that power for good, or you can use it for not so good. And that's a choice. That's a choice. So when I started here, I set my faculty down that I oversee, and I said, I work for you. And they were just shocked. I was like, I'm here to help you to do your job better. And that's what I do. And it's created an atmosphere of safety and thriving, artists and scholars, just because you have a choice, I think. I think you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've kind of made a priority with my position as supervising TFs is going in and giving them feedback, every time, every semester, going in and really thinking about what was the lesson you presented, how did you engage students? And I think sometimes they think they have to teach like the perfect lesson, when I come, or like, when's the perfect time for me to come? And I'm like, well, I, would love to see you make mistakes or like try something, because then, I can really give some feedback. Maybe I can learn something from it, but like overall, like they're so afraid of like failing in front of me sometimes, and I'm like, have to purposefully, like intentionally be like, it is okay. You do not have to teach the perfect lesson. In fact, I have never taught a perfect lesson, and like be really intentional about that, so that like it's a super safe environment for the students in their class, but also, the teacher, if they're getting observed, if I'm trying to give them feedback, being like super intentional about that relationship. But like, I'm ultimately here to support you. I'm not trying to like, critique you and say, oh, I'm the best teacher and you need to do this now. It's just genuinely, here are my thoughts on what you just did.
That's right.
Take that
and we should
and
do
try
that
it again next time.
And we should do that for each other all the time. I mean, I really think whether we're writing and sharing, just think about some things we've written that we haven't shared because we're worried about what people may say about it. I don't know. I just, when I read that, when I go back and read that article about that we, as full professors and graduate students, we got to look out for each other, no matter where we are, and share the realities of this, but also share your failures. Like you were saying, I think that Ben, it's like this did not always go easy, and here's something that really was bad for me in the class. Like the time, and I'll admit this right now in Dope Doctors, there was a class that I taught, an 8 o'clock freshman theory class, and it was so terrible, I picked up my books and I walked out. Jenny Snodgrass walked out of a class. Am I proud? No.
You heard it here first.
Well, I will confess, I taught an oral skills 2 one time where I made a mistake at the piano every single day. Like every single time I would try to play something for them, I would play a wrong note or a wrong rhythm and I'd have to start over. And it got to be like a complex in my head. And I taught the same class, like another section of the same class 1 hour earlier. And I never had to repeat anything the whole semester. But the second section, I would play something wrong every day. I don't know. Their test days. Exactly. On their test days, I would be like sweating it out because you don't want to play stuff wrong on an oral skills test.
Now let's be honest, if we're being real, my friends here, if we're being real, like, have we ever like played a wrong note and then just changed it in the dictation?
Absolutely.
To where
Yes.
I've definitely
100%.
Or a wrong
For me, it's
rhythm.
usually
or,
5 versus 5/7. Like, oh, I put the 7th in. Oh no.
Okay, well that's going on the key.
That's right. That's right. Oh my gosh, so many times. But the thing is, we are so used to like being good and being praised. I feel like academia, the people that go into academia, go into grad school, are good at school. They're used to being told they're smart, they're talented, they're excellent, and they expect that to just kind of keep on going, right? And even when they hear, well, it's hard, or it's, the odds are stacked against you, we've been told that we're special, we're talented, we're gifted, we're smart so much that we believe that we're going to be the exception every single time. And I feel like that just really sets folks up for, and myself included, like a lot of disappointment at times, because you do find out that you aren't smart enough, or you aren't talented enough, or maybe you are, but you don't get the lucky breaks that other folks do. And so there's so many things that go into it, and I think part of it is the people that go into this, like us, have those kind of inner voices inside of us that propel us to think that we can overcome things. And so we also then put up with a lot of crap from people, right? We put up with a lot of mistreatment because, we believe if we pay our dues, we'll make it to where those people are. And then we can put crap on other people.
Yep.
Trying to keep it PG here.
Yep. That was good.
Well, and it can be hard to let go of some of those, like, well, I had to go through that, so
Right.
so why shouldn't you have to go through that, qualifying exams or whatever it is that was a hurdle or a challenge. But I'm just all about removing those now. And Ben, I loved what you said about observing and you learning things from your TFs. That happens to me all the time. I always tell my adjuncts, I observe them, fairly often. I tell them, you're welcome in my classroom anytime. Come give me feedback. Tell me something you've done that you think would work better than what I'm doing. And I will take tricks from what they're doing all the time into my own classroom. Be like, hey, I saw this in oral skills. It's really working. So we're going to try it in here as well. Those kinds of things. So.
Now, one of the things that struck me when you're talking about the difference between private institutions and public institutions is the red tape. Jen and I have experienced that because we both were up for promotion, and Jen at a private school, her promotion took her 2 or 3 months? One month?
Yeah, it was one semester basically. Like I submitted on the first day of the semester, and I was promoted on like November 7th or something.
So I went up for promotion. I think I sent my first document in middle of August. I finally got the approval from the Chancellor and Board of Regents in May. And so,
that's a long year to wait.
That's a long year to wait. I mean, you have little
year,
benchmarks, but I'm like, oh my gosh. And Jen's like, hey, I'm full. And I'm like, still in the pipeline. Still in the pipeline to get associate.
But in the pipeline right now.
And Ben, you're going through a promotion right now. And so I guess one question that I would have for you is, if you're fortunate, I mean, we'll use scare quotes, fortunate enough to be at a university full-time in some type of position where there is promotion, you might find yourself moving from, a faculty position where you're teaching to more administrative work, like kind of how you're finding. What advice do you have for faculty who might be contemplating that, or maybe not necessarily contemplating that, but kind of forced into it, or like encouraged to go into those directions at the university where they're at?
Well, I tell you, one of the best things I did, and it'll be in that article, that I was in a group about a year and a half ago, where we went through a book called The Peak Performing Professor. And it's called The Peak Performing Professor, A Guide to Productivity and Happiness or something, that allowed me, through step by step, to write out my personal purpose and my personal mission statement as a university member in whatever ways. And when I laid all that out, when I wrote my purpose out, it says in there, knowing your purpose and mission leads to easy yeses and strong nos. So anything that came through my email to ask me to do, I looked, because I had it pasted, I looked at that purpose statement and I said, does this match my purpose and mission statement? And if it didn't, the answer was no. Now I know I'm to the point in my career where I'm able to do that. I get it. But that was just amazing for me to write it out. So I guess the advice is to look into those strengths and to really see why you're doing it. Like if opportunities knock and you're like, how would I do this? How could I go into admin when, teaching? Or how could I be an admin and want to go back to teaching? But know your why. I say this all the time. It keeps going back back to the first episode, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, know your
why. Know why.
Yeah.
Know why you're making some of these decisions. And so some of my advice is to just keep it real with yourself. Don't worry about what your dissertation advisor thinks. Don't think about what your field may think. Think about what's going to bring some productivity and contentment to your life. If we learned anything during the pandemic, I think it's a little bit more about priorities and what matters and what doesn't matter the same. So
Absolutely.
My advice is to get a core group of friends, know your why, know your strengths, write them down again. And if you can see yourself fitting into a different kind of mold, try it out. I mean, I think about when I wrote my dissertation, I may have said this in episode 1, but wrote my dissertation, I was basically told, do not write a dissertation that is pedagogy focused, and I wrote a software program and I did all that for my PhD and sold my software the week after I graduated. And I just stuck with what I loved and wrote about what I loved and was 100% invested in it. So don't make decisions based on somebody else. I have this, here, I'll show it. We do like strength finders and stuff. I've done that before. Mm-hmm. And one of mine is, and I found this out in this process about trying to figure out if I wanted to come here, is I'm called a maximizer. And when you look up what that means, I mean, it's Jenny Snodgrass. It's someone that sees something good and wants it to be better. Exhausting? Yeah, for some people. But that's when I knew, okay, I can be a pretty decent administrator, but I was not willing to give up teaching. And that's what I can have at a private school that I might not have been able to have where I was at, to do both.
Yeah.
Now I'm just teaching faculty. Like I'm mentoring faculty and teaching students.
But
that's really
to me,
great.
I'm like, that's the perfect Jenny Snodgrass job. Like if I was gonna pick somebody to like oversee faculty and then teach some theory classes, I would pick you. Like that's the perfect Jenny Snodgrass.
And I have a Dolly Parton poster up in my office because she records right down the street. I mean, win-win for me. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I was going to comment about the easy yes and the strong no. That is something that I definitely need. I'm one of those people that has a really hard time saying no to people. If anybody comes into my office, I just want to help them so bad that I will pretty much say yes to anything. And then my calendar, the next week just fills up like crazy. And then I feel like on Friday, I just can barely keep my head above water. So
and that was
I'm definitely going to do this.
And writing it out and posting it up. And when somebody would ask me to do something or be on a committee or whatever, or a student wanted me to be their mentor, I would look over there and I'd go, nope. But it was hard. I mean, it took a lot. It took months for me to write my purpose and mission statement. Months to get it to where I felt like, yep, that's me. And I might not like it all. I didn't like the fight. I really didn't understand. I wouldn't say I didn't like. When I wrote it out, my mission statement, the first word was leader. And teacher was the second word.
Yeah, we've been doing some reading of Enneagram studies, which is
Oh,
a
yeah.
similar type of personality type of thing. And one of the things that they talk about is that you often don't like your number. Like there are things about your number or your strength finder that you're like, oh, I don't like that about myself. I would rather not be this. I would rather be
Right.
something else. But you can't change that, right? So you have to kind of grow into those things that you are, right?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's good for our students to see that too. Bring it back to the students.
Sure.
I think it's fine, and well, even more than fine. Here I got students that want to be an artist manager. They go do an internship and they fall in love with, music publishing and copyright. And they're like, but I came to be an artist. And I'm like, but that's fine. That's great. That's what experience and doing these things, that's what the point is. That's why you're in school, to figure out where you can do your best work.
So what would you say to someone who's fully tenured, maybe even full professor, who's not interested in being an administrator, but doesn't want to be stagnant in their career? What can they do?
Absolutely. Just hang out with your younger faculty. Hang out with the junior faculty. Hang out with your graduate students. Get ideas. Have a topic of the week or whatever, and go out for a cup of coffee and say, what's happening in your classroom? Because I think one of the things we do, for those of us that have been at this long, we just kind of get stagnant, and and just do the same thing, and everybody looks to us and that kind of thing. And it's so incredible to sit down with a group of graduate students at a conference and say, tell us what's going on. Tell me about your research area. What do you see that's missing in the field? What is an area that I can help champion as somebody that's been in it a little bit longer? So I think it's a matter of listening and learning. And, we ask our students to be lifelong learners. We have to do the same thing. Read a lot. Go to papers at conferences that you're like, I might not be interested in this, but let me go check it out. You just don't know. Never stop learning.
Well, and everything you just said is leadership in its own way. You don't have to be an administrator to be a leader.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
You can still
use that
develop
voice
those skills.
for good.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of saying yes to everything that comes my way, faculty burnout. Very relatable to probably several listeners.
Nice.
There it is.
I saw
it is,
it on
front and
Facebook
center.
just 2 days ago, I think, and I was like, "Oh, there's
Just came out.
another
Yeah.
thing to put on the questions for Jenny in a few days."
Oh, definitely. I have to ask. I really want to know. Obviously, I have not read it. It's pretty hot off the press. No pun intended with burnout there, but what do we need to know? What are the what are the things that we can do for ourselves, or what are the things we should be telling our administrators, now that you've had a little bit of, toe in the water administratively? What are the things we can ask for? Because I will tell you straight up that I am afraid to ask my administrators things sometimes that would actually really help my life and my self-care. But I back down and I disintegrate into a pile of sand when confronted with a situation like that.
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me is the sense of community. I think the burnout stories and the people that I really have worked with that I truly feel that are in burnout mode are people that kind of don't tell anybody I'm struggling. I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Whether it doesn't even have to be a chair or a dean or anybody. It can just be a friend, or a colleague that you say, hey, like, this is too much. Let me figure out what I can do. I think for me, the goal, and I think I've talked to people about this before, like, there are a lot of goals we set for ourselves as those in academia that, are long-term goals. Write a book, get a major grant, win a teaching award. Those are big goals. And I think we forget sometimes to set these little goals, like, I'm going to write 3 pages today. Or by Friday, I'm going to develop a new section B on a test that I gave. Now I'm going to give the section A that I taught 5 years ago, but I'm going to put something new, like baby steps. And then this might be where I think we miss the mark. We don't reward ourselves for that, for the little ones. Like, you get a promotion. Yeah, your family's going to take you out to dinner. You get, a major publication. You're going to post it on social media because you're so proud. But fixing that section B on a test that's been sitting there, that's been wrong for 2 years. You following me? So, and the little goals things are rewards they're silly for me, but it's helped me so much. If I fix that, then I get to go take a walk for 10 minutes. If I fix that and get that for here, like if I get my agenda up for our faculty meeting on Tuesday, then I get to go get a cup of Starbucks coffee. Like, that's what works for me, are these little to-do goals, and I write them out. And that is what has saved me. Big goals are on a big sheet of paper, little goals are on these little sheets of paper, and I cross them out, whether they're on my Google To-Do or wherever, I cross them out. And so I can look back. Crossing them out, I can still see them. And I like, wow, I did a lot today. Or I did a lot last week. Or I got so much accomplished in September, because what we do, we're like, big goals. All I can focus on is big things. And then sometimes they're unattainable, right? Mm-hmm. So reward yourself for the little moments. And that's really saved me. The relationship, talking to somebody when it was getting hard, and rewarding yourself. And then finally, and I know I preach this all the time, going back to that purpose statement and saying no. I know it's hard. It's really hard when you're starting out, but you can't do all things for all people and do all things great. You'll burn
Jenny,
out.
This episode feels like therapy for me, but I needed all of this said to me. But I was like fully in burnout when we started the pandemic, just like fully there. And so I can't even begin to tell you how bad it was by the time we were like returning to the classroom and all of those things, from having to learn all these new skills in order to teach online and all those things. But also the pandemic gave me a lot of perspective, like you said, about what is important. And there are many, many things in my life that have changed as well in the last 2 years that are very different than they were before. But I don't know if you've read Emily Nagoski's book, Burnout. If you haven't, it's really good. Yeah. But just the idea of getting the tension, getting the stress, getting all those big deadlines that you haven't met yet, or all those big projects that you can't finish yet, getting all of that like out of your body every day by being active, by, doing things like rewarding yourself, being kind to yourself. All of those things are really important. Regularly taking care of yourself. There's I think it's somewhere in one of the chapters in that book where she talks about like self-care is not a bubble bath. Self-care is like parenting yourself and saying no when you know that you don't have the time.
Right.
Or self-care is saying, I have to do this poorly because I don't have the time to do it well.
Right.
And if my only
said.
Yeah. So, that's all really useful stuff. And I think sometimes, guys, don't take this the wrong way. Guys suffer from just as much stress and burnout as we do. But I think sometimes women in universities, especially if there are fewer of us, then we end up on more committees. And we end up on, because we want things to be equal. People of color struggle with the same thing. Administration wants everyone to be represented. And if there are fewer of us, then we end up doing more. And it just adds to that pile of things that are, making everything feel challenging. So, yeah, I love that this book exists because faculty burnout is really real. And from the outside of academia, a lot of times people think we don't really have that much to do. That's like this common myth about being a college professor. Like, oh, you just teach 1 or 2 classes and then like you have coffee or go home or I don't know what. I'm like, no, it's nothing like that at all. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the article, the 7 Truths and a Lie, that you have to sell your life and sell your soul to be successful. And that's one of the things I was told. And so I think as we that represent this idea that it doesn't have to be that way, we have to model that behavior for our students. Otherwise, it's just this cycle. I think that big thing about my 3 points in this burnout book is about leaving your office, of course, but goes back to that flattery. When flattery continues by colleagues or upper administration, realize there's a chance behind the actions because it causes you to say yes more often and to listen to others' agendas rather than your own ideas. So we just have to have a check-in, back to relationships, have a check-in and say, hey, I've been asked to be this. So I don't know. I've been so fortunate to have really close colleagues that kind of watch my back and I watch theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is sometimes a struggle when you're a theorist and you're used to being by yourself all the time,
Yeah,
right? You're kind of in this little bubble, right?
Right.
You're used to, you don't have to collaborate. We've been talking with folks about research and things like that, and IRBs and all these things like that, and we don't have to worry about any of that. We just work in our office and maybe collaborate a little bit, but we don't have to, communicate to others like that. And so often we kind of think that we are our product, we are what we make. If we're not making, or if we're not doing those things, we can really struggle with that. One of the things I found interesting was I was able to read the preface on Amazon, the free part. The author of that book wrote a book about vitality and it's like being this vital professor, and then she shares in the preface how she ended up going to therapy because she didn't realize that she was burned out, and so she had this very complicated relationship with her book about being a vital professor who's living a full life, and then her own real life, which was kind of in shambles. Which I really appreciate that honesty that she had and willing to share that.
And the stories, a lot of these stories in here are not, they do not use their real names, and it's just, I mean, there's something in here for everybody, I think, because I think we've all, if we haven't suffered from burnout, we've been close. And you'll read a story and go, wait, did I write that? Did I turn that in? Because, that's my story. So I think it's, it's just out, and I was really thrilled to be a part of it, but it's just amazing how especially during the pandemic, how tired we all were. So tired. And then our students were tired, and bringing it back to classroom teaching, like the amount of energy I had to put in my teaching, physical energy, to bring that engagement of what worked so well 3 years ago, like it was exhausting. And it's better now, but those 2 years on Zoom, all the cameras are off, and you're like, all right, spell me a dominant seventh chord on the key of G, and it's like nothing.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Relating.
Oh,
so
totally.
Exhausting.
Absolutely.
Yes. I think I did a little presentation about teaching online. It was called Good Morning Rectangles, because it was like you're just speaking to a bunch of rectangles.
Right.
But like bringing it back to students, I think is a really good thing too, because at least for me, my students are so much more aware of their own energy levels, their own burnout levels. I mean, they are aware of self-care like I never was when I was in college. Like, you just power through, right? And so what do you say? I guess there's kind of two parts I have for this question is, what do you say to the students that are experiencing burnout in your own class, and how do you encourage them? And my other part is, what do you say to faculty who are kind of like, as we've talked earlier, like, well, I had to do this. I had to, pull myself up and, deal with all this stuff. I didn't have to worry about self-care. And now I have all these students saying they're struggling. What do you say to those professors who are maybe hesitant to acknowledge the struggles that their students might really be going through? And you don't have to name names. You can.
I'm not, but I'll start with the second part when faculty say, "But I had to do it," and my always response, because I do get that. It's like, "Well, did you enjoy it? Did it help you to be a better teacher or a scholar or a musician?" And they're like, "Well, no," and then I'm like, "Stop the cycle. I mean, stop it."
Yep.
So that is my response. That is a very short answer, but that's actually worked, Paul, when I was like, was that a good time? Did that help for your educational experience?
Right.
And I think, when I think back, just some of the things that the amount of hours I put in, like for my assistantship, let's say that, for my assistantship, and it was way over what my contract was, and I was doing things that had nothing to do with my assistantship, right? But I never would question it. I just did it because that's what you did. Well, let's make it a thing that we're going to follow contracts, because that's what it should be in real life. Just because they're graduate students, don't treat them differently,
Yep.
So as far as what I tell my students that are dealing with some of these, dealing with it a lot. A lot of my students are working, which, and have jobs outside of school. And, I waited tables through college. So I'm kind of grateful in some ways I did that. And I tell them, I have 2 more years till my loans are paid off. And they look at me in horror. And I'm like, I don't regret it. I don't regret it. And I did work my way through school. But I also think that for students that they have to realize how much they can take before they A, break, or B, quit loving music. And I don't want it to get that point. So sometimes we just have those conversations of if you dropped one class, what would you do with that extra 3 hours? Or if you cut back, most of them can't cut back on work. And that seems to be a universal thing where more students are working off campus. But if you cut back, you're in 4 ensembles and you're only required to be in 2. Could we cut you down to 3? They're so worried about what their applied professor would say. And I'm like, well, let's have the conversation. I'll go with you if you feel better about that. I think they just sometimes need someone to give them an out. Mm-hmm. And to say, it's okay if you drop an ensemble. It's okay to drop a class. Because otherwise, is it good for you to stay in Oral Skills 2 and barely pass with a C? Or to drop it and then take it next semester, start fresh, and end with a pretty good B+.
Right.
I just think students and us as faculty, we just haven't given ourselves enough, grace and time to say, hey, this is too much. Because we're always trying to prove ourselves. Think about it. Think about it as musicians, especially us that started so early, like playing in piano guild or solo ensemble. Like, we're talking 6th grade. You started to be judged. And no one gave you an out. They were just there to tell you it wasn't good enough. There's a lot of people like that. So those would be my 2 things. Tell the faculty, did you enjoy it? And tell the students, what can I do to make this better for you? Here's some options. Like, have options for them.
Yeah, I love that. Great. I think, too, inherent in a lot of what we've just said is this idea of, like, acknowledging it in yourself. Like when you said at the very beginning of the conversation about burnout, you said about telling someone else, like just letting someone else in on that information. And when you said that, I thought, it took me a long time to tell myself. Like, hey, you're burned out. It's not going well. You're not doing okay. Right. You're letting on to everybody that you are and to yourself that you are, but you are not. So a lot of it is just acknowledging it. And if the student has come to say, I'm having a hard time and I don't know what to do, like they've already taken that critical first step of recognizing it and seeing it and asking someone for help.
Right.
So it's a big deal.
Absolutely. It's a big deal.
Well, you are our 50th guest. And so, actually not 50th guest. This is the 50th episode. We'll say you're a 50th guest too. But you're also, you have a pulse on what's going on all over the place. Music theory, higher ed, you know what's going on. So we want you to put your Nostradamus hat on just for a little bit and tell us what you see in the future for music theory instruction. What do you see heading down the road in the next 10 to 20 years? What's going to be the thing that is maybe different, or where you see it going that is exciting? Because we're going to stay positive, all right? We're going to stay positive about the future.
It's great. The future's great. Like, I'm not scared. I'm a person that thrives on change, obviously. So, I think we're already doing some of it. I think incorporating of a new literature, I think that's been going on for years now. I think the idea of experience in the music classroom, like playing and improvisation, bringing your instruments to class, so many people are doing that and taking it to the next level of being creative in the music theory classroom, whether that's through guided improvisation, undergraduate research, and even going into the more commercial fields. I know that's where I'm at now, but with songwriting and jingles and getting that and creating something that these students are really proud of that may can turn into something. I think students now really want to know how it applies to them. So I can, from a music education standpoint, the idea of the DAW and the recording and how many music ed students I have that are like, I need to record my band. Like, I need that in a class. Well, I think we learned how to use a lot of that during COVID, but I think the recording side of things, we're going to be doing more about multi-tracks and stuff in theory classrooms. I really do think, because students are coming in, as their own little mini producers, regardless of the instrument they play, even if they're, a viola player, they're like, hey, I put my viola with this cool loop, and that's something I never would have thought of, because you don't need to be in a studio anymore. Like, these students can buy a great microphone and create, and they want to create. So if we take that away in the music theory classroom, that creative thing, I think we're going to lose them, because that's what they've been doing for the past couple of years. So I think that's a big thing for theory. I have a passion for public music theory over the past couple of years, and getting some of the ideas and conversations out of just academia. So when I, here in Nashville, when I go into the studios and talk to the writers and the producers and the engineers and talk about how they're using musicianship, and I want to write about that more. And I want them to feel comfortable coming to us and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this chart right here. Like, how would you approach this? And have more conversation from the academic people and scholars to the working musicians on film, video games, popular music, country, gospel, all of it. I think there's a real place for that. And I think music theory can be one of the disciplines that can really reach across the aisle on that. Just call me Jenny. They call me Jenny from the block here. Just call me Jenny. They don't have to call me Dr. Snodgrass, these people in the industry, because, again, they have 15 Grammys, and I'm like the only person without a Wikipedia page. That's cool.
Okay, we need to change that. You need to have a Wikipedia page.
No, just kidding. But what was the other question?
I think kind of expanding it out, I think the natural progression is to think just higher ed, Where do you see higher ed going? And let's keep that positive too.
I don't have any trouble being positive about it, because I think there's so many problems in some ways that it can only get better by people sharing their voices, or figuring out the place they need to be where they feel like they can share their voice. Let's say it that way. So I think in higher ed, I think as leadership changes, I think the idea of community, of people, of listening, and of value is going to happen. I don't think we're there yet. I think we have a long way to go. That's why I can be positive, because I think it will happen. And I think sometimes this is a hard question, because I think that sometimes we can get caught up in the idea of everything that's wrong, and we're not getting this and we're not getting that, and get back to why we're here. We're here for the students. And every decision that we make has got to go back to that in some way. Is this decision that I'm making about should this event come to campus good for the students? Is me adding another section and having to work with the budget to get that section taught, is that best for the student? Whatever I have to do, that goes back to my mind, that's me. Is it going to help my faculty teach better, do better, learn better? It's going to help my students learn better, play better. So I think it's coming. That's a really tough question, because we're not there. But I think we will get to that sense of community, because we lost it for 2 years. And people are craving it. So we need leaders. If anybody's listening, thinking about going into administration, we need leaders that are not about self, that are about others, because that's what we are in the classroom. That's good teaching. So there's a reason I think that I'm here, and I think that might be my next thing. I'm training up and teaching the next leaders. So.
Well, let us know when those classes are offered and when we can enroll. Hopefully you do long distance learning.
Yeah.
I feel another book coming.
We will
take me a couple years. Yeah.
Well, we always do like to end with some rapid fire questions, and usually they're related to music theory, which I think we should get back to, because those are your roots,
Yes.
Jenny from the
And
block.
I loved
Her
Jenny
roots
from the
are
block.
music theory.
Teaching
And
music
so-
theory. Still love it.
So, Jen or Ben, do you have any rapid fire music theory questions for Jenny from the block?
I have mine. I'm ready.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so I'm going back to the very beginning of our conversation today. You said you're walking down the street and you're sitting in on a producer producing a recording session. From those experiences, what do we need to be doing in oral skills that we are not doing?
Very great question. 100% about harmonizing over a melody, like being able to hear a melody and not only do like, okay, here's the Roman numerals that could go with it, but just harmonizing a counterpoint line on the spot with that melody. That involves a little bit of understanding musicianship and music literacy, but also a little bit of improvisation, a little bit of safety to be totally wrong.
Yep,
Yep.
I love that.
That's great. Ben?
Gosh, I don't know. There's so many things I could ask. I would say,
All right, I'll ask my
I guess
question.
this
Ben.
really was therapy.
I have like 4 different things that
Ben's
I'm trying
working
to
through a
choose
lot of
between.
stuff.
I'm sorry. I ruminate on things. This is a strength and a weakness of mine, both in the same. Go ahead, Paul. Give me
All right.
1 minute.
Okay, so my question is, first day of class, first day of theory class, what's your first thing you do with your students?
Sing and play.
Music
Of some
starts.
sort. Music started. I put on a song and we just do something to it. I don't care whether we're singing the bass lines to it. It depends on the class. Or if I'm clapping on the rhythms on it. I'm trying to think about what I did here. I did some, got their musical taste before the first day of class. So started playing it and saying, what are you hearing about this song that made it such a hit? So I think some sort of musical experience before I open a textbook, before I write anything in the board while they're participating.
That's great. Because we are teaching music, of course.
Yeah, sometimes we forget.
Yeah. All right, Ben, did you figure something out?
I've got mine. I went through a lot of different options in my head, and I've got one that I really feel strongly that I want to know Jenny's answer to, which is, in your opinion, is it possible to have a successful musical experience in oral skills entirely online, asynchronously? Is that possible? Or is it something that we should completely avoid?
Well, Ben, we'll pick that up on the next episode, on episode 100
I'm thinking-
with Jenny Snodgrass.
No, I'm thinking episode 100. I think as long as there is some sort, it would be very difficult, and you have to be an absolutely master teacher and very purposeful in how you lay it out. There has to be in oral skills some sort of experiential playing around. It cannot be, for me, you asked my opinion, it can't be a dictation class. It absolutely cannot be. It cannot just be sing this melody. No, it cannot be just that. It has to be them internalizing these skills through doing. And it would have to, asynchronous is a little tough. So constant communication with that instructor to where you'd have to put in technology and some tracks and stuff. So you're implementing some of that togetherness community oral skills. I mean, it's not just singing in class that I'm talking about. It's about knowing that you're off and knowing that you need to fix something without touching your instrument. However, what I learned during COVID about oral skills is that there is a skill in transcription projects where they need to use their instrument. And that is part of a skill that I need to teach more, is about how to get through transcriptions using instrument and how to get through dictations and small transcriptions without. I will never go back to just one or the other. That was a hard one because
I love
you had
that.
to.
I've been
it
doing
has
a
to be
lot of
such
thinking about that.
It's a good one.
Yeah. That's very good. So as we're wrapping up, maybe you can let our listeners know, what is coming up next. You already mentioned a couple books maybe coming out, and you have an article. Well, that'll already be out probably by the time this comes out. But what else do you have going on? And where can people find you? That's the other question. So where can people reach out to you?
You can find me 2 miles from Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee, in the middle of all the recording studios and session writers, as well as all my great classical musicians. Now, I'm at Lipscomb University here in Nashville, Tennessee, and everyone is welcome to email me there at jenny.snodgrass@lipscomb.edu, or just come watch what's happening. I would love for more and more of my music theory friends to come to Nashville. Let me take you into these studios. I got kicked out by Blake Shelton the other week. I'll make sure he's not there. And to go see how these musicians are using this. So I think my next main goal is to do the 3rd edition of Contemporary Musicianship, which is going to be a whole lot easier instead of driving back and forth, and to work on this public music theory idea with the writers and the session players here in Nashville. Like, how do I know that producer? How can I listen to a song and know that's that producer? Like, what are they doing while they're listening to make that song have that stamp? So that might be coming. So from the music side, I also just feel like I have been placed in something where I can really mentor people that may want to go into administration. It's not where I thought I'd be, but I'm a lot happier than I thought I'd be at it. And I want to write about the realities of how to be a good leader, a servant leader, and a teacher leader. I will never, ever, ever give up my time in the classroom. It's part of who I am. So I want to continue to teach, and that's across the board now.
That's your why.
100%, right?
You just made it to the end of another episode of Note Doctors, the music theory and pedagogy podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review the podcast, and you can always reach us at notedoctorspodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or show ideas. Thanks for listening.